Welcome to Conversations with My Sister's Keepers, where we bring awareness, share stories, and promote healing-centered conversations for lived experience professionals and allies in the gender-based violence and recovery sectors. I'm Shameen Brown, and together we'll explore strategies, resources, and insights to support wellness, recovery, and leadership. Join us as we challenge stigma, celebrate autonomy, and normalize the healing journey. Let's build a community of understanding and empowerment, one conversation at a time.
Thank you for joining us today for Conversations with My Sister's Keepers. Today, we have our sister's keeper, Danielle Churley, who is a dedicated survivor advocate with nearly a decade of experience in the anti-human trafficking and gender-based violence fields. Her advocacy work spans consulting, public speaking, and participation on the Dufferin-Caledon Domestic Assault Review Team Survivor Panel. Danielle's personal journey through child abuse, intimate partner violence, sexual abuse, sexual exploitation, and sex trafficking deeply informs her approach to advocacy. Danielle highlights systemic issues that perpetuate gender-based violence and champions the importance of continuous trauma recovery. She emphasizes the critical need for ethically engaging survivor leaders to prevent re-exploitation and support long-term healing. Currently, Danielle is completing her social service work studies and aspires to further her education at the university level. Danielle has served as a residential support advocate and volunteer coordinator at Elora House, a safe house for survivors of sex trafficking, and has frontline experience through both her professional roles and her volunteer work. In addition to her advocacy, Danielle is an aspiring poet, hoping to use her poetry as another powerful tool for raising awareness and fostering change. These conversations with my sister's keepers are crucial for survivors and survivor leaders everywhere. It's time to advance beyond trauma-informed and resilience-based narratives of surviving, thriving, and leading, and to embrace a healing-centered focus on wellness and recovery. Today, we aim to challenge the stigma and judgment many survivors encounter during their healing process by sharing insights into our own recovery and wellness journeys. Welcome, Danielle, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I recognize how important this is, and I want to help reduce the barriers for others. I am really passionate about talking about the importance of ongoing recovery and taking care of ourselves as survivors.
I love that. Thank you so much. We're talking a little bit about your story and kind of what things had looked like for you. Some of those extra layers to that healing journey, some of the things that you've struggled with along the way, both in early recovery and now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's impacted like many aspects of my life, and there's been quite a few things that I have struggled with along the way, and some I've definitely overcome over the years, and some I still am working on. It definitely impacted the way I was able to love myself or to care for myself, especially within the beginning, or even reach out and ask for help. I think that it took a lot of courage and a lot of reassurance from the people around me that I needed the support and that I wasn't being selfish by taking it, and reminding me that I was worth it and mattered. I felt like the world would, or people would see me in a light I didn't want to be seen, and they would think of me in a way that like I was already thinking about myself, and I would be judged or met with anger instead of grace. And it didn't turn out to be that way at all. When I sought help, I got the support and love and grace that I needed. Yeah, I think it took a lot of work to get there, a lot of internal work, therapy, self-care, learning who I was again and finding myself past the trauma, as well as the domestic assault review team has had a giant impact on my life overall and has shaped a lot of how I've been able to overcome things. I started on Dufferin-Caledon Domestic Assault Review Team after the first time I was exploited and abused, and I remained on it. I took some steps back when I was going through those things again. But I always was met with understanding and grace and welcoming arms, allowing me to show up in the field in the way I was able to at the time and what I was ready for. And the coordinator of it, Laura, she was a huge piece of that too, because she supported and encouraged me, encouraged my recovery, encouraged me to take steps back when I needed to and to come back when I was ready. It's been paramount to me in my recovery and to my journey to have somebody who does the coordination and is on the team like Laura, who may not necessarily be a survivor themselves, but works in the field and meets us at that level and shows up as a peer and is able to encourage our strengths and to allow us to do it at our own pace, and also have a group of women who get it and understand and who all want to do the same thing and advocate and make change and understand the different levels of things that can come up, or everybody's story is different. Like it just, to have that space, I've been incredibly lucky and incredibly grateful for it.
If I were to ask you what's helped you most in your recovery, would you say that's it, or is there something else as well?
I would say that, as well as just connection and other survivors and the people who I love, who love me, and the professionals in my life, and the connections that I've built throughout the recovery journey have been a huge part of that. And other survivors are the ones that I have grown with and learned with and recovered with and been able to like learn how to laugh and share joy again and to be happy, as well as the ones I've leaned on and cried to and been able to break down and be my most vulnerable self and be okay with that. And every step of the way, I'm incredibly grateful for the survivors that have come into my life. I think it is a sisterhood, and I actually wrote a poem early in my recovery about survivors, and I titled it Soul Sisters because that's how I feel. Like I think that connection is so vital, and being able to see the survivors in my life grow and to fight for themselves and to have their strengths and their skills and to be able to learn from them has helped me in turn be able to fight for myself and be motivated to continue and to want to do this kind of work and to get involved and to be a part of something really important.
Yeah. So there's kind of two pieces to this when we think about how we're growing and how we're moving away from our experiences of victimization. I think there's that personal piece, that recovery piece, and how do we like re-experience or even experience in the first place? Who knows what our background was, right? But how do we get to a place where we know safety and joy and confidence and comfort in our own skin, which is one piece. And then the other piece is, how do we learn the colonial capitalist language of workplaces and deal with the office politics and the fake people and the scary dynamics of you can lose your job in a second, which means you can't provide for your family. And like you're stuck doing things that maybe don't feel authentic or that you don't understand and no one's explaining. And for me, I found that's where peers have really come in. When I get to just sit down and have a bitch fest and I don't have to be professional and I can say, what the F is this? Like systemically, it might make sense. But in reality, being a survivor, if I were in that client's shoes, that is not okay. Right. And being able to come from this, because if I do that with people who don't have lived experience, often I'm told your trauma's getting in the way. But reality, it's my humanity. It's my humanity that is reacting to something that feels inhumane. Because I've experienced some level of it, perhaps, yes, but it is still my humanity reacting to something that feels inhumane, and being able to sit with someone else who understands injustice that I'm reacting to, maybe not trying to fix it, but at least creating a space that normalizes it and tells me that I'm not unprofessional or crazy for having strong feelings about having to do things that don't feel right.
I very much relate to that, as well. As I've started to learn how to re-navigate the world like that I'm in, and getting back into the professional field, having my survivor friends and survivors in my life to be able to discuss these things with and talk through and talk about the systemic issues and colonialism and capitalism and how those things impact so much of our world, and even the like similarities in certain ways to exploitation and how a capitalist society and jobs run, and having the support of somebody who gets it, who's been through it, who doesn't think I'm seeing it through a lens of trauma, but through lived experience, and being able to have that connection and that like non-judgmental, like understanding space has been incredibly important to me. It's been a huge part of my journey too.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think there's a lot of value, like you spoke earlier about Laura, and I'm just gonna keep going back to her because it stands out for me, right? That you were just like very clear early on in this discussion about your recovery that that was a person that made sense for you and made life make sense for you, right? During hard times, despite the fact that she did have expectations, let's say, right, of you in terms of your volunteership. And I think that having folks to have that bitch fest with is super important to normalize this professional learning curve. But in terms of professional growth, I don't know where I would be without lived experience and non-lived experience. And I want to highlight non-lived experience for a moment, just because it's a weird thing, but it does hit different when someone without lived experience thinks you're fabulous.
Yes.
When there is another professional who doesn't understand what you've lived through, looks at you, someone that you admire, and says, you're actually worth it, right? Like it just hits different. And to have those people that are going to advocate for you, that are going to promote you, that are going to fight for you. I was invited to do a project with someone that I think is amazing. I always tell her, like, you're like a giant to me. I'm like an ant. Yeah. And I was really insecure. And she had stopped in the beginning before we did the thing. And she said, I'm sensing that you're not your usual confident self. And it was the topic. I felt really nervous about the topic. And she said, I just want to remind you that I didn't invite you here just because you're a survivor. I invited you here because you're brilliant and I believe in you and you deserve to be here. I just want to remind you because I can see that you're feeling a little bit, you're lacking confidence and you earned the right to be here. And that was so important for me because who knows, I may have been so nervous and so insecure in that moment that I could have burned the house down and screwed up what I was moving into, not because I'm not equipped to do it, but because self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, shame, stigma, trauma were like alive and well in my self, in my body that day. And thank God that somebody was able to recognize that and say, hey, you deserve to be here and you're worthy. And not just someone who could recognize that because they were also a survivor and resilient and strong in those ways, but because they were a professional that felt that I made a meaningful difference in the community.
Absolutely. I think that Laura has definitely been one of those people for me and has really uplifted and encouraged my skills and strengths and reminded me throughout the whole process that I have this strength, that I am capable of these things, that I have something worthy of saying. I experienced that a little bit too with working at a Laura house and under Louisa and Nicole, who aren't necessarily lived experience, but they saw something in me and believed in me and knew that I had something to contribute and me to be a part of Alora House. And I was incredibly lucky to be able to be uplifted and encouraged and to have more than one person who was in the professional realm who could see things that I couldn't necessarily see all the time or that I struggled to see within myself for a while and really again walk through their journey with me and continue to uplift me and encourage me and remind me of my strengths and what I have to offer the world, which has been huge. And to know like they don't necessarily have lived experience, but they work in the field. They are respected and admired, and for them to recognize that even outside of having lived experience, I think
Yes.
is incredible. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. So powerful. Hey, the nature of relationship and what this trauma informed, supportive, healing centered relationship can actually look like and do in the life of anyone, right? It's such a powerful thing. And I love that we're talking about that and highlighting what that looks like. If you were to give advice to an organization that works with survivor leaders, what advice would that be?
Yeah, I would definitely say there's a few things supporting survivors and their wellness and recognizing their different skills and diverse stories and different needs and being able to meet them where they're at and having the room for them to be able to grow and to learn and to come into survivor leaders, a huge thing that can really make an impact. And I think it's so important to have somewhere where there is that level of respect and admiration, but there's also a recognition of what we've been through as survivors and a recognition of the ongoing healing journey and how important that is as well too, and keeping ourselves well so that there isn't relapse or burnout or re-victimization. And I also think along with that, it can be really hard financially coming out of being trafficked and being compensated fairly for our time and for our skills and for our knowledge is incredibly important. It can be easy to pay the bare minimum and just get through, but I almost believe that is in a sense re-exploiting us.
Yeah.
Yeah, our
There's no
time.
ifs, ands, or buts about that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think what we have to share is so important and valuable, and the skills we have to share is so valuable, and that should be reflected as well through the compensation, through the recognition, through how we're treated in the workplace, through the supports. It is so paramount to make sure survivors are fairly compensated, that they're being supported. It is important to recognize where they've come from and how far they've come to, I think, and to really build them up and to allow for space to grow and to learn and to have our voices heard and to be able to share. And I think that's why the domestic assault review team has been so paramount to me in my professional journey and why they've done so well and why I speak so highly about it, because they've been able to do a lot of those things very well.
So can you give me some specific examples of what that looks like for an organization to be doing those things?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a number of things. One of them that comes to mind, a specific example would be when I, for example, had gone through school or going through school, and there is things like the survivor application grant for survivors to go back to school. Having Laura be willing to sit down and fill out that application with me and make me aware of it and make me aware of some of these resources that are available to me. Like, that's not necessarily in her job description as the coordinator, but she takes the time to make sure that all the aspects of my life are being looked at and that I have the supports I need. And if I like need something else, to make sure that I receive that or am referred, or that I can call somebody at family transition place, or even with being fairly compensated for my time, looking at if we're doing a full day training, like how much would that be to take time off of work and compensating similarly or more than
Nice.
what that would look like for work. And as well as even just like the times where I've had to take steps back, and I've always been met with grace and understanding, and still like hearing from people and still hearing about the dates and being encouraged when I'm ready that the door is open.
Being kept in the loop.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you're still part of the community. You haven't been ejected or disposed of because you're struggling. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
When you talked about Laura helping you with that application, what I was thinking was that in my own experience, when I was in school, most recently for my master's degree, I had folks in who had their masters and doctorates just spend time with me on the phone, right? Support me as I was trying to figure out, what do I want to do for my thesis? And what does this thing mean? And what does that thing mean? And Sometimes I would cry because they're like, do a lit review. And I'm like, what's a lit review? And I'm like Googling for 3 hours trying to figure out what a lit review, how lit review, right?
Yes, yeah.
In those early years, right? It's a learning curve. And then you're parenting and you're working and you're doing this and you're doing that. And just knowing that, again, you're not in it alone, right? Like I found that really helpful. And then also within contracts, I've had 2 separate contracts with 2 different people in different organizations who have invited me to come in as a consultant. But when I've said I need support in these ways, they've opted to promote and support survivor leadership by offering me those supports, as opposed to moving on to find someone who's finished their degree, maybe doesn't have lived experience, and just made those accommodations. I've had folks support me in different things that I've written, for example, different reports or whatever that I've written for their organizations. I've had folks, hey, we want you to set up like these 12 meetings, but they've given me like a step-by-step instructional, because I'm like, I've never really done that before. Can you give me an idea of what you need from me? And so not making me feel stupid, not dumping a bunch of stuff on me that I can't handle because it's new and I don't have, not because I can't handle it, but because I haven't done it and I need some mentorship and instruction. I learn fast, but I can't paint without crayons.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, just having folks at so many different levels, I think is what I'm trying to say here, that can support, right? They can support with that application, they can support in the job role, they can support, but it's that mentorship. And I love that holistic, what you're saying, right? There's more than one piece. Yes, there is more than one piece. Yeah. Early recovery, I had folks helping me with daycare. I was going to coalitions that had daycare there. So I didn't have to miss, right? I could bring my kids and still participate. So those sorts of things also, depending on where you're at in your journey, make a huge difference.
Absolutely. Like having those people meet you where you're at and help build you up and guide you along the way and walk with you. It's so important, and it has really impacted me. And I, yeah, very much relate to that, even with schooling and going to different people who I've met in the field who don't necessarily have lived experience, but have done a lot of the schooling and things, and being able to talk with them through things and to bounce ideas off of them or ask them about things that maybe I'm just learning about or getting to know. And even with the public speaking and stuff, Laura, whenever I do anything through the domestic assault review team or do any speaking like that's requested through them for me, she offers to sit down and to go over any of the speeches that I write. She offers to support me with that, to be there to help guide and encourage and uplift me. That has helped with my confidence and ability to speak on my story and figure out where I'm at and what I'm ready for and what I'm not ready for and when I'm ready for those things, and has made a huge difference too.
Yeah, I'm hearing almost some personal mentorship in there too, around that, like self-reflection and self-awareness and what am I ready for and what can I handle and who am I now? Some support with some of that and giving you the resources to help you, pursue your who you want to be, your chosen future. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what would you say, what advice would you give to other survivor leaders?
I think the advice I would give is, one, take care of yourself and put yourself first and do the things that you need to for you, and do things at your own pace. Don't let people push you into something you're not ready for. You know what you're ready for and when you're ready for it. And find the people who support you and uplift you and who can be a safe place to go to when you need extra support, when you might feel triggered, or when you just need to be uplifted or need some advice. That has been a huge pivotal thing for myself. And I think, as well as like, I struggled with this at the beginning of getting into survivor leadership and stuff, is the weight of the world isn't on your shoulders. There's a lot to be said in collaboration and leaning on others and having that team or group of people to like have you to be able to contribute. And there's a lot to be said for having various perspectives and diversity within whatever you're doing, and that collaboration piece can be huge, and it can be healing for us as well too. And I think just, yeah, making sure like that you feel comfortable and that you're you feel respected and that your time's being compensated, because it can be really easy to feel like you, or like at least in my experience, feel like I've had to take opportunities to get further or to get my leg in the door, but realizing maybe those opportunities weren't necessarily right or something didn't feel right about it. Like you get to decide where you go from here and what you do and how you do.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that. And there's so much that you said there too that's connected to some of those struggles in recovery, because as much as it's like you get to decide, I feel like we get to decide, but we still haven't worked through a lot of the stuff that influenced our decisions, influenced to make decisions that didn't support our well-being. And so there's that, the insecurity, there's the lack of self-worth. I know one for me that I'm continually working on now is like feeling I have a bad judgment of character, right? I shouldn't say I'm continually working on it now because it's not in the same, it's changed who I am. The work that I've done on it has changed who I am now. So now I have really firm boundaries around who I let into my life and who I don't. But early recovery, it was one of those like, why do I keep making the same mistake thing? Right? Where I couldn't trust the people that I let into my life and I couldn't trust myself to choose wisely. And so then it's, oh, you got to lean on to people, you got to ask for help. But every time I did, it was an ugly experience.
Yes.
So, learning how to navigate that space and understand who I am and what I need, and then setting really firm boundaries in my life around what I allow.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's been huge for me as well. And learning what healthy and unhealthy looks like and being able to trust my gut and instincts and what I think myself as a person all plays into that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I could talk to you for hours, man. All right.
I love it. I feel the same way.
Two more things I'm going to throw at you. I'm curious, is there a message of encouragement or guidance that you want to leave for the survivors who are still fairly early in their recovery journey? So we're thinking about that early recovery journey before we are sure 100% that we're moving in the direction we want to be going in.
I would start with saying it's not an easy or a quick process whatsoever. It's an ongoing life thing, but in my experience, it is so worth it. And outside, on the other side of those things, there can be such beautiful moments and beautiful people and beautiful things in your life to experience. And for me, that has made all the difference. And to be able to see some of that light in the world again when I was so focused on the darkness for a long time, and figuring out how I wanted to recover and what that looked like, learning to trust yourself. And I know that takes time, but that your story, what you've been through, what you need. And I really struggled with this in early recovery, was like listening to everybody but myself, even though at times I knew exactly what I needed and what I wanted, just putting that on the back burner. But as soon as I learned how to start advocating for my needs and my wants and fighting for myself, I started to gain the strength to recover, to feel empowered, to do the things I needed to lift myself back up again. And there's people to lean on and to help you through that. And it's always okay to pick yourself back up and reach out for help. There are people who are going to be there and who will love you through it and who will not judge you and get you through the parts where maybe you can't love yourself and you're judging yourself, and you deserve that. You're worth it. You're worth so much. Like no matter what you decide to do in life, where you decide to go, your life, your story, and what you do with it is so important. You're important to the world, and I believe in you, and I am sending so much love to all of the survivors who are maybe still in it or just exiting or just in their early recovery. I know how difficult it is, and I'm so proud of you. Like I that it takes so much strength in itself, even just to consider to leave. That shows a ton of strength, and you're worth it. Even if you can't see it right now, I'm telling you, you are worth it. And there will be people in your life who will see you're worth it as well.
Love it. Yes, queen. All right. I'm going to give you an opportunity to give one person, non-lived experience, if you can, a shout out, someone who's made an incredible impact on your life. I'd love you to tell me a little bit about who they are, and we're just going to tell them thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first person that comes to mind is Laura Muscatelio, who is the coordinator of DART, because she's just had such a profound impact on who I am and where I've gone in this profession and what I've been able to come through. And I will always be grateful that I crossed her paths. And I often say that, like, every survivor deserves a Laura in their life, like, to have somebody who believes in them, who encourages them to follow their dreams. I couldn't be more appreciative for the opportunity to be a part of the domestic assault review team and to be able to speak at Heidi's Walk and to be able to speak at Orangeville's upcoming Take Back the Night and have these opportunities present themselves, and for her to encourage me through it all.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Laura. Shout out to Laura.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining Conversations with Our Sisters Keepers, where we have real women, real lives, and real talk.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed being here.
Awesome.